I think for me, it's just been a really great book. Like I always refer to it almost as like my Bible, which sounds like not, in a religious way, but more
Uh,
like that. It's like it's something that I can like just kind of go to in the moment. So just for example, last couple of weeks, I was just feeling a lot of like heaviness with like, sadness and shame showing up for me. And there was just a lot of different things that were going on for me at the time. And so sometimes like in that moment, like you might not always have, someone to like reach out to, or, you kind of feel like you don't know really like where to even start with like untangling everything that's showing up for you. So I think for me in that moment when I had the book, it was like, oh, you know what? This is showing up for me. Maybe let me go to that chapter that talks about shame, that talks about sadness, and kind of have it walk me through. I think that's what I would say about the book. It's just a very clear, easy to understand, like practical like guide that could just help you in your day-to-day life.
Welcome to the Mighty Emotions podcast. I'm your host, Giselle. I'm a certified emotions coach, and I teach you how to respond better to your emotions so you can feel better in your life. My mission is to show you how to work with your emotions to become more emotionally resilient. Your emotions are not designed to overpower you, they're designed to empower you. On this podcast, I share what our emotions are, how to understand them and work with them, and the tools you need to reclaim your power and get unstuck from emotional pain so you can find fulfillment in your life again. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Mighty Emotions podcast. I am your host, Giselle. I am an emotions management mentor. I am the author of Outrunning Your Emotions, which has been released this summer. And I actually have a fun guest today. Very, very grateful and excited that a reader of my book is here to talk to you about what that experience has been like, how, she has found the book, how she has used the book, how she continues to use it. And I was chatting with her about it offline, obviously, and I was just so happy that the way she described it is exactly the way I was hoping that people would use it. And so that just made me so happy. And I hope that from listening to this episode, you can understand what you could get out of it or how you could use it and apply it in your life, and that it might help you make a decision about whether or not you want to read it. So welcome to the podcast, Kavibi.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Of course, I am so delighted that you are here. And I just want to open this up by maybe you sharing with the listeners kind of what made you interested in the book in the first place, like what drew you to the book.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think for me, what drew me to the book is just like my own experience with like, I think a lot of people can relate to this, having feelings of like, whether it's like anxiety or sadness or just different things that you're going through in life. And I think sometimes like not really knowing like where to turn to or to like, how you can actually get relief from what you're feeling. And so I think for me, a big part of it has just been like trying to see like, how can I just like take care of myself and like, work on healing myself, but like in a way that just feels more like easy for me. Because sometimes too, when I'm online, I see a lot of information, but instead of it being helpful, it's just very overwhelming. So I think that's kind of like, where I kind of started with like seeing, okay, where can I find information that would actually help me and be very clear too in the process.
Oh, amazing. And yeah, I love that you said that you wanted it to be clear and that a lot of the information online can be overwhelming because I think we overcomplicate healing in general. Like we make it this thing, this is a grand thing. I need to heal my whole life. And it's like sometimes you just didn't get the life skills that are actually quite simple, that are foundational to help you through everything, which is why I wrote the book, because I wanted like this one kind of resource guide. So I'm so happy to hear that. And let's get straight into your review. Give the readers and me actually. I'm really curious to hear because I haven't fully heard a review from you, but like what would your kind of review be of Outrunning Your Emotions?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just been a really great book. Like I always refer to it almost as like my Bible, which sounds like not, in a religious way, but more
Uh,
like that. it's something that I can like just kind of go to in the moment. So just for example, last couple of weeks, I was just feeling a lot of like heaviness with like, sadness and shame showing up for me. And there's just a lot of different things that were going on for me at the time. And so sometimes like in that moment, like you might not always have, someone to like reach out to, or, you kind of feel like you don't know really like where to even start with like untangling everything that's showing up for you. So I think for me in that moment when I had the book, it was like, oh, you know what? This is showing up for me. Maybe let me go to that chapter that talks about shame, that talks about sadness, and kind of have it walk me through. And I think for me, being able to like, open the book, go to that chapter, and then being able to just walk through like all the steps very clearly into like, okay, I need to do this, this, and that. And then also having an example too of someone, a character who's going through those same, emotions and kind of like what's showing up for them and how they go through that process, I think for me has been the most helpful. So I would say for me, like in terms of review of the book, it's something that I would say it's been very helpful in just being able to break down those like, actionable steps that you need to take in order to be able to, go through the process of feeling your emotions, of processing what you're going through. And I would say not only that too, but just having something that's very clear and not, I think a lot of books sometimes tend to be filled with like a lot of like bigger situations or just kind of like a lot of information where you're like, okay, I understand that I'm feeling this and that, but I don't really know what to do after that. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, myself included, with like, okay, I know sadness is coming up for me, but, what do I do about it? Like, how do I, really like take some, steps to actually solve that? And so I think with the book, it really just makes it very clear and makes it like, clear language for you to understand and to be able to kind of see like, oh, you know what, like I need to do this and then I need to do that. And then, also just like walking you through like, those actual tools you can do, whether it's like, okay, to feel it, what can you actually do? So like, what are maybe like somatic practices that you can do to help you, get the energy moving through your body and then the processing. And so I think for me, it's just been how it's just been very clear for me. And I think that's what I would say about the book. It's just a very clear, easy to understand, like practical, like guide that could just help you in your day-to-day life.
Thank you. And that I'm so glad. I have so many questions from that. But just the fact that you have really found it to be clear and practical, and I 100% agree that there's so many great books out there, but they don't give you the action to take, and that's where we get stuck. It's like, okay, I know I feel sad, and I know, sadness is this and that, and it's okay to feel sad, but like, I don't want to keep feeling sad. What do I do? And, to actually, that's why I created the Mighty Emotions method, because I realized in my own life that there needed to be a process. Like people are always saying, trust the process. Well, I don't know what the process is, so how can I trust it? Like, so I wanted to give people the method, the process, step one, step two, step three, step four, and make it really simple and easy to take action on. So when you were kind of, like you said, going through difficulties and using this book kind of to anchor you, which is how I really wrote it, did you find a transformation in how you were feeling, like before you picked it up versus after you read through it and took some of the steps?
Yes, I would say definitely. I feel like before, like, and I think maybe I speak for a lot of people when I say that, like, early on in my journey, it was very much like me trying to just like get relief. So I thought in my head that if I just, work out every day, I meditate, I journal, like, I'm going to feel better. And so for a long time, I was just kind of doing the same things like, okay, I'm going to have this really strict schedule with myself and it's going to involve all those different things. And if I just do that, then I'm going to feel better. But then I never actually truly felt better. Like I still felt like anxiety. I still felt, different emotions showing up. And I was confused as to like, okay, why are those still here? Like I'm doing, everything by the books. Like I'm literally like very like, rigid with my, routine and it still wasn't working. And I feel like over time, like it just kind of like took a lot of learning with like, okay, this is how emotions work. So I feel like for me, when I picked up the book, it was more like, it really broke down like, oh, okay, you know what? I might not need to do like a rigid like workout routine every single day to feel better or, journaling. Like these things are really great and they're tools like anything else. But I think what I understood from the book was that I needed to actually process what I was feeling and that when emotions for me were showing up, they were often just like a signal to tell me that, oh, you know what? There's a need that isn't being met. And first, you also need to just, be with that feeling, be with the emotion, you need to process that feeling in your body. And it's really nothing to be like, once you let your body know that you're safe in feeling that, then you can then move towards like, okay, like now let me try to see, ask myself questions like, why is this showing up? So for me, I think when I picked up that book and started to kind of go through the steps of like, okay, I'm feeling, shame, for example, showing up. and then like going through step 1, 2, 3, 4 to kind of see, why it was coming up for me, and also letting it also just, how does it feel in my body? Once I did all of that, it really felt like something was like lifted in a way where it's like I felt like a relief, because it was like I was actually able to address what was showing up for me. So like, oh, I need maybe more connection, or maybe in that moment I
Mm.
need more support. And I think that was more transformative, because it didn't require me to maybe have to do a workout and then call it a day. It was more like, oh, let me actually see why this is showing up, and then take the steps to actually, work on that. And I think that has had more like lasting impact for me in my life than like anything else I've ever done before. So yeah.
Oh, that makes me so, because you know why it makes me so happy? Because this is what happened to me when I discovered this. And I was like, this is why I created Mighty Emotions. I was like, people need this. Like, people need to know that it's not about fixing yourself and doing all these things to never feel bad. You're going to have these emotions come up, right? But
Mhm.
it's like when they come up, how do I respond to them? How do I let my body know that it's safe, right? Like, how do I get back to that space of being grounded within myself so that I can actually clearly understand, okay, what do I need to do to take care of myself? And when we're in survival mode all the time, we don't know that. And we think that we can go from survival mode to clarity, or we can go from survival mode to being okay just by, like you said, journaling or meditating or whatever the case may be. And sometimes those things can help us cope when we need to cope. But eventually, yeah, we do need to do the work of actually understanding, what shame feels like in our body so that we can recognize it and we can be familiar with it. And would you say that reading the book and using the book as like a resource, like you said, I love that you just like go to the chapter. That's what I want you to do. If you're listening to this, just go to the chapter on the emotion that you're struggling with, because I really wrote it in a way to kind of move you through it. But have you found that overall your relationship with your emotions has shifted, or how you see them, or just other people's emotions even? We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but like how you deal with other people's like how comfortable or uncomfortable you feel. Have you found a shift there?
Yeah, I would say that now I think emotions, they're not as scary as they used to be. I think before, if anything, I was more about like, just like numbing them, or not really aware like why something was showing up for me. So I could feel, for example, like a lot of like sadness, but I wouldn't really know why I was feeling it. It was just like, okay, it's showing up for me right now, but I just need to kind of push through. Or it would just kind of feel scary. So I would maybe like numb, or like distract myself a lot, or just kind of do things that just weren't really helpful for me. And I feel like now it's like, they're not as scary, because I think now when they do come, I know that I can be with them. And even if it feels, uncomfortable, or it doesn't feel, obviously like pleasant, it's still like, I know that I'm going to survive the experience. So if I'm feeling very sad for a particular reason, I know that I can be with that sadness. I can feel like the heaviness of it. I can feel how it feels in my body. And I know that I need to do that in order to kind of move through. But it doesn't feel as maybe scary as it once did, because I know that once I kind of get through that process, I know that on the other side is kind of like, there's more to kind of do, be solved. So I know that, oh, it's coming up for a certain reason. And I think once I kind of sit with it and then let that move through my body, then I can kind of work on trying to see, what is it that's not being met. So I think it's definitely less scary for me than it was in the past.
Yes. Oh my God, that makes me so happy, because that is really the ongoing journey of getting to befriend our emotions. And through doing that, we're really befriending ourselves, right? Because the
Mhm.
emotions, they're not us, they're not my identity, but they're a part of me. And when we're always turning them away, we're really missing out on this opportunity to grow as people. So that's why I wanted the book to be a resource in a way, because it's not like you read it and then it's like, oh, great, I'm done. I know how to handle my emotions. It's more so like, okay, when it's showing up, I get better and better and better at responding to it and sitting with it and dealing with it. So I love that you shared all of that. I wanted to kind of touch upon part three of the book, which is about needs. And you've mentioned that frequently, that you're realizing more and more that the emotions are showing up because there's a need that isn't being met. And I just wanted to know, before reading the book, did you really understand your needs in this way? And has the book kind of helped you to practice better self-care in a way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say that, yeah, I think before that, when like, say emotions were showing up, sometimes it was easy for me to maybe also put the blame on someone else. So if I felt very angry, it would be, well, this person is doing this and it makes me angry. Or if I felt anxious, it could be that, maybe there's always somebody else to kind of like blame and like, I'm kind of like powerless and it's all on that person. So a lot of it felt kind of like, I'm feeling this thing, but it's like, I can't really do anything about it. It's all on maybe somebody else to kind of like, if they can help me feel better, then I'll be okay. Or if they can do this, then I'll be okay. And I feel like it wasn't always helpful because obviously, as we know, like you can't, we can't control other people. And sometimes when we feel things, it's something that it's coming up for us. So I think like once I read the book, I was able to understand more about like what our different needs are. And so, for example, if I felt very angry, let's say that like I had a coworker who was doing something and it made me really angry, it was a good way for me to check in on maybe like my boundaries. Like, was I maybe, am I setting the boundaries that I need? Am I, communicating, what I need from that coworker, things like that. And so I think once I was able to say from that way, it really helped me to see that like whenever things do come up, there's like a certain need. So even for example, sometimes when I feel very sad, I might, if I really do some more digging, I might see that, oh, you know what, maybe I haven't really been prioritizing, connection, maybe whether it's connection to, nature, maybe it's doing something that I really like doing with other people, maybe it's connecting to myself. But I know that when that comes up, I kind of can pinpoint into like, okay, you know what, this is a need that's not being met. And oftentimes when I do kind of fulfill that need, I notice that I feel lighter because I'm actually paying attention to what's like showing up for me. And so not really putting it on maybe somebody else or oh, it's that person's fault, but it's more like, okay, like what can I do to like meet my need? And then I think that's been the most helpful.
Oh my gosh, so empowering. It makes me so, so happy. I literally, you can't see my face, but I'm grinning from ear to ear because it's like this is exactly the effect that I wanted the book to have. And I wanted people to take better care of themselves by understanding like your emotions are signs that you need care. Like it's not a sign that something's wrong with you or you're broken or you have to fix yourself. Because I think, a lot of times we do all the self-care, self-help things because we're trying to fix ourselves or fix what's broken and not so much with the intention of like nurturing ourselves. So I think that was a big reason that I structured the book in this way because I wanted to help people understand like how to nurture themselves truly. And so I'm so glad it had that effect for you.
Yeah,
Um I also wanted to touch upon briefly how you've used this book not just for yourself, but when we were speaking, you were talking about how you turn to it as a resource to help support your partner, not necessarily being like, read this, like shoving it in his face, but like when he was coming to you with emotions that he was struggling with, you shared with me kind of how you turned to the book to help him with that. So can you share more about that for the listeners?
of course, yes. So I think with me and my partner, sometimes like, sometimes like when you're in a relationship, it's easy to want to maybe just kind of like throw all the advice at, the other person, like, oh, well, do
Mm-hmm.
this and do that. So it's often, and I think also naturally for me, I can, often like, even with the work that I do, it's like easy to just kind of want to just list all the advice. And if you just do this, and things will change. But I know that it's not, how things work. And sometimes people need to, be able to kind of like, it's like that answer's like within them. And so I think with my partner, he was just going through like a moment where like things just kind of felt heavy, where he just felt like it was the same, maybe routine day in, day out, like, go to work, do this. And so he just kind of mentioned a bit of heaviness. And so I remember at that moment, I thought, okay, maybe let me, like, I didn't maybe have as much capacity in me to like support him, but I'm like, maybe I can use the book because the book has helped me a lot. So maybe if I can, find questions I could help him and kind of see what he's going through. And so I think like I was able to ask him, like, once he was able to go through that heaviness and just kind of process that, feeling in his body, I think then he was more in a clear space to be able to kind of like be more receptive. And so I just asked him questions from the book that was more like, okay, well, have you done anything for yourself in a while? What are your hobbies? What are things you like to do? And I think just asking him those questions really made him think about the fact that maybe he hadn't been prioritizing just his need for like freedom and his need for connection. And I think like a lot of the heaviness he felt was just around that, around the fact that, there was things that he liked to do, but that he maybe wanted to prioritize more, or there were things that, he felt that maybe he was boxed in. But once he realized that, oh, I can set this time aside for an activity, or I can do this, and that's actually going to make me feel, good because I'm prioritizing something that I like. And so I think just by asking him those questions through the book, and that was too like a moment where, again, my capacity was very low at the moment because I was, maybe going through my own stuff. So being able to just even open that book and then find those questions, I feel like it helped him a lot, because then I think after that, he was telling me, oh, I signed up for this thing, and I signed up for hockey again, or I went to this convention. And I think it really, like, you could kind of see him like light up. And I think for me, that was just like, it was just, again, proof that the book, even just a book, and being able to ask him questions around that helped a lot. And he's not a big reader, so he's not someone who might necessarily read, but I think for me to be able to just open that up for him and be like, okay, like, I'm going to ask you questions and kind of see how this goes, I think I could see, that change kind of like happen in him. And it was just like transformative to see. It's one thing to see it in myself when I go through the process, but to see it in
Mm-hmm.
someone else and to really see that, oh wow, like this actually really helped you. And like, yeah, it's just really
Oh
great.
my God, that makes me so, again, this whole conversation is just filling my heart so much. I'm so grateful that you're willing to come on and share your experience with the reader. And I really wanted to touch on this piece because I loved how you talked about not having the emotional capacity necessarily in that moment, but being able to lean on this resource that I've created to support someone else as well. And the fact that sometimes we just need to be asked the right questions. Like sometimes we just need someone who is going to approach us from a way of not trying to fix us, but trying to help us understand what's happening to us, like what we're going, like what's why this is showing up, why this is coming up. And so I hope that through reading the book, you found that it's not me necessarily trying to fix you, but it's more so me trying to support you in supporting yourself. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, 100%. No, I think it's definitely accurate in the sense that, like, I think the book is like, for me, it's just very supportive because it doesn't tell you, like, oh, well, do this and your life will change, or do that. It's more like, it gives you kind of like tools that you can use in your own life. And I think that's what I like about it too, is, for example, like, even when it comes to like different chapters, like, for example, maybe like anger, there might be different ways that you can actually, work with that anger in your body. So whether it's like, you're going for a run, whether you're, like punching against a wall, like anything that, it's like there's different tools. So it's almost like it's very catered to like, as like every individual person, works differently. So it's like you can find something in the book that is like, okay, you know what, let me try this. If this doesn't work, maybe let me try that. So there's different examples. And so I like that part of it too, because sometimes, what works for one person might not work for the
Mm-hmm.
other. So for me, being able to like open the book, and then if I'm going through an emotion and I'm trying to find different ways to maybe let it process through my body, I know that, oh, I can try this. So for example, I recently tried humming, and that has been like amazing with certain emotions, and I had never tried that before. But just to even be provided with that example, that tool that I can use, but then somebody else maybe might try something else that might work better for them. So I think for me, it's just been, yeah, it's like a very good guide that you can have that, again, doesn't tell you what to do per se. It just kind of guides you into the right way of like, working through what's coming up for you, and also just giving you that example too at each chapter of someone who's going through a similar emotion, and then what they do to kind of like, work through that. So I think it's been really
Oh,
helpful.
thank you. And absolutely, I love that you said that. What works for one person may not work for another person. So that's why this method is not like do this, do this. It's more so here are some things you can do at this phase, because it is a phase that we go through, right? There's the phase of noticing and acknowledging and getting honest with ourselves, and how that looks for me might be different for how it looks for you, but it's still an important step in the process. Or, honoring it and processing it in your body. Sometimes humming works really well for me. Sometimes I need to do something else, right? Because each emotion has a different chemical reaction in our body, in our nervous system. So there's different ways of moving the energy, but it's also important that we do move it, right? Energy needs to be moved. And then the clarity piece, what connection looks like for you is going to look different than what it's going to look like for me based on where we're at or what we need. But it's still important to remember that overall connection is an important need. So I'm so, so glad that you came on, Kavivi. Thank you so much. I hope that the listeners can really identify and relate with everything that we've talked about, but understand more how this book can be used and how it can be supportive and helpful. Like, it's not just another self-help book. I hope it's actually like a resource and a guide. And to hear your experience and how you've used it to support your partner has made my day. It's made my life. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, anyone who's interested in grabbing a copy, you can go to mightyemotions.com/book. It's available in Canada, the US, it's available worldwide. and you can get your copy. There is no audiobook, sorry guys, but I do have this podcast, so you can tune in each week for episodes of the Mighty Emotions podcast, or connect with me on Instagram at mighty_emotions, and I am more than happy to support you in that. And yeah, just keep showing up for yourself, keep being gentle with yourself, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you so much, Kabibi.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean so much if you could subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends and family, and let me know what you think by going to my Instagram at mighty_emotions and connecting with me and letting me know what you loved about today's episode. It really means a lot that you support this podcast, and I love coming to you each week with a new episode. So be sure to subscribe, let me know what you think, and take care of yourself.